I'm Peter Konczal, and I'm on the Cinematography podcast. I always like using this, almost like the cheapest rulers you can find, and these little glass rulers that you can fit in the matte box. And then I would throw them on the ground and actually step on them and scratch them up. And
They were too clean. They didn't have enough aberration. So that's great.
I mean, literally like the cheapest stuff you can use, right? And I've just found like people use split diopters and they get these like clamps and they put on they get really precious. And they just take these things and just jam them in the, and you can see them all over the show.
This is Cinepod, the cinematography podcast, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. I'm your host, Ilya Friedman, and today on the show, I speak with Peter Konczal, ASC, cinematographer of HBO's Black Rabbit. His excellent work on the show earned him an ASC award. In this episode, we dive into how the deliberately low-tech analog toolkit Pete assembled with co-cinematographer Igor Martinović became the show's defining look. The toolkit included one-of-a-kind soot filters, scratched-up glass rulers, wedged into matte boxes, used to complement detuned lenses, and a low-contrast LUT. How a custom greenish-blue fill light was used to contrast cast from the environment. How Pete took inspiration from the asymmetrical framing of Michael Mann's The Insider, intentionally mismatching reverse shots. How choosing to light large areas allowed performance to unfold without interruption. And Pete and director Laura Linney's use of tableaus to great effect in key scenes. After the interview, stick around for our short ends, our pet obsessions of the week. But now, find out what's going on in the world of entertainment in a segment we call Close Focus. Hey Ben, before we get to the interview with Peter Konczal, let's dive right into our Close Focus. What are we talking about this week?
It's something you brought to my attention. I didn't realize it. It's that Artlist. Probably a lot of our listeners / viewers might be familiar with a company called Artlist that launched about a decade ago, and basically it was kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet of library music, very well curated. My father, who had a business that was audio related, had an Artlist subscription, and basically they're pivoting. Artlist is pivoting to an AI-driven model, and they about a year ago they hired according to the article that you sent me, which is from CineD, the artist formerly known as Cinema 5D. A year after hiring 120 artists, they laid off 200 employees, and they're pivoting to an AI model where they will presumably stop using music made by people and start using music played by robots. And I'm not happy about this.
It's about 40% of their workforce, and they're a $300 million a year in annual recurring revenue company. So
yeah,
they probably could afforded to keep a few more people on, but they are changing the way they do business. It's interesting. They are a Israeli creative technological company, and there's 500 employees total. So they literally got rid of a huge portion of their workforce.
But the thing is that I mean, like, look, they're going to lay off people. They're going to hire people. I don't have an Artlist subscription, although my father did. I have an Envato Elements subscription, and Envato Elements, I mean, there's a bunch of services like this. There's Storyblocks. Envato is the one that I use. And a lot of these, I wish I understood them better, honestly, because these services are very handy for filmmakers. If you like Envato, if I need lower thirds, like I can go download some cool templates that I can bring into After Effects or Adobe Premiere and just generate kick-ass lower thirds. If I'm looking for stock imagery, there's tons of that on there. If I'm looking for music, if I'm doing a corporate job, I might download, 3-4 songs to crossfade between them. Back in the olden days, before I had that, say 10 years ago, I would go to a company like Premium Beat, where it would be $50 per track. And this is like, you're getting the full license to use it wherever you want to use it, right? It would be $50 per track, and I would just budget that into my bid on a job. And now it's like I have an Envato Element subscription that renews every year. It's, I believe, $200, and I can get all the music I want. Now, Envato has AI music composition, and you can go on there and say, I want corporate music that uses, a xylophone and a slide whistle, and it'll make it for you. And
That's a popular request. The xylophone slide whistle medley.
Can't get enough xylophone slide whistle. Sometimes they'll add, could you add some klezmer, a little more klezmer, but you can basically have it whip up whatever you want. And I have played around with it, but I still have, maybe call me old fashioned. I still have this thing of like, there was a real musician who made a piece of music, even corporate music,
with real instruments. Yeah, absolutely.
And they might have done it all with MIDI. I don't know what they did it with, but I would rather use that, and I would rather think that a human person, musician who has made some music, at some point some money got transacted to them to put it on this site, and now I'm going to use it, and maybe they're going to get a small sliver of whatever royalty Envato pays. Whereas with AI generated music, you're basically paying it to a server farm. You're paying it to a data farm, and some nameless, faceless company that's generating Suno like music. Which I'm not here to crap on people who use any of that stuff. I just choose not to.
I think what's interesting though is that we're already hearing about companies that have let go of people because of AI, citing AI, and then finding that it actually costs them more and they have to hire people back. I don't know if that's going to happen with Artlist here. I don't really know exactly how the roles were or who the roles are, but the story seems to be that most companies that are making these transitions are transitioning poorly and then actually regretting these decisions. So I'm not exactly sure where these, it doesn't go and exactly say what the roles are, but quite often the roles to disappear tend to be customer service. So if you value interacting with a human, especially if there's a problem, there's a good chance that companies that are making these drastic changes are cutting the sort of the only lifeline that you might have to actually empathy from another person to get you a solution or support to what you're up against. It will remain to be seen what happens with Artlist going forward, but they became a super successful company in just the last 10 years. So it is I
want to understand better how these companies work, because all of them charge, I think, between $2 and $250 a year for a subscription, and it's like all you can eat media, whatever is on their thing you can grab. So you could go on, Envato Elements, and like, let's say you wanted to get shots of butterflies. You could go down there and download hundreds of shots of butterflies. And now you basically could use them for whatever you wanted. The only thing you couldn't do is turn around and offer them on your own stock footage site, at that point. And I always wonder how much money the people who make the video templates or the sound effects or whatever, I've noticed that a lot of, because I'll on the film that I just edited, I if I was looking for sound effects, I have a bunch of sound effects that I have archived, but it's actually faster and easier for me just to go to Envato and see if they have them. And as it turns out, a lot of them are the same, Hollywood Edge or whatever, like these old libraries are just living up there. Who's getting money for it? How much are they getting paid for it? Does everyone get paid if I just download it? I don't understand how any of it works.
I can explain a little bit of it, because I know some people who do make their living doing stock. Stock is how they do it for photography. They do it for video. I will tell you that it has eroded tremendously in the last decade as well, too. So there was a time when you could make really solid careers out of doing good stock work. I understand that it's fewer and fewer people who are able to do that now, and that basically anyone who's trying to get into this space, it's harder and harder, because the companies that used to pay money for this are fewer. They've merged and combined. Some of them have gone out of business, and libraries and whatnot that were owned by these things have been acquired by other companies, and people who used to be able to rely on it purely as a source of revenue are having a hard time doing it. So it's like every other thing out there. The internet has caused it to become more plentiful. caused it become easier to access. But just like the music, the Apple Musics and the Spotify's of the world, as you increase more data, more licensable content inside of there, it means the splits for the people who created that stuff get less and less and less. And so it entirely depends on who you're working with. And I actually think that there are some people who will probably revolt at some point and stop licensing their stuff to certain services because just the money's not worth it. So already there's already a hierarchy. There are some premium services. Getty Images is still the top tier, they pay the most. They have stuff that is exclusive you can't find on other platforms. Some of these less expensive platforms, they have exactly the same footage as you've described across all of the different services out there. And they're really competing with each other. But if you need to have something that not everybody else has access to, you're probably gonna have to pay more.
Like, I just wonder, is it a race to the bottom? And then is using AI a way to be like, okay, well, what if we had a stock image and music site and sound effects site and didn't have to license anything? We just cook it up for you custom whenever you need it. And it's, just, it's all AI, and I mean, like, for corporate music, I hate to say it, but like AI can do corporate music pretty well because corporate music is by its very nature background and inoffensive. Like, it's not really saying anything except keep watching this video.
I think it's really interesting because all of this does bleed into the greater narrative world of Hollywood too. And I think it would surprise a lot of people out there at how much makes it into a big movie or television show that is not actually something that was captured originally for that program.
All the time. I mean, you'll see Getty Images or Shutterstock or whatever credited in the end credit roll, and a lot of times it's like you have a TV and there's something playing on the TV in the background. Like, are they going to go make that? I mean, if it's an important plot point, they will, and if it's not an important plot point, if the plot is we're in a busy house and there's a TV on, then they're just going to get something they can use.
Many years ago, I got hired to go shoot that footage specifically for the movie Torque that was directed by Joseph Kahn because they wanted to have original stuff playing on televisions and stuff. So yeah, I got a job doing that. So
no,
anyway.
I mean, you do that kind of stuff all the time. And on the short that I just finished, I needed a shadow moving behind a door. And I found just like a shot of someone moving from left to right on a green screen stage, brought it in, blurred it way out, made it look like a shadow. And it's like, this person who's a real person who's doing something has no idea that their performance in a very small way is going to be in my film as a shadow on a door. People use stuff like this for that kind of thing all the freaking time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Artlist. I don't know if this is going to be just another one of those stories where a company realizes they have to hire a bunch of people back, but I'm going to be following with interest. Artlist does sit inside of our industry, and there are people who are using it on the regular. All right, why don't we get to the interview now with Peter Konczal?
Excellent, let's do it.
I'm joined now by Peter Konczal, cinematographer of the hit Netflix series Black Rabbit. Welcome to the Cinematography Podcast.
Thanks so much. So happy to be here.
Hey, we know a lot of the same people. A lot of your contemporaries have been on the show. I think it's kind of amazing that so much time has gone by and we haven't had you on yet. So I'm really delighted that the planets have aligned that you and I can talk about Black Rabbit.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And I don't think Igor Martinović, the other cinematographer, or myself have really talked that much about the show. So it's a lot of fun to be here.
Yeah, Igor came on the show to talk about Wormwood years ago. We talked with my co-host Ben. We have so many people on the show these days that it's impossible for any one of us to talk to everyone. So we divide and conquer. We split up the duties as much as possible so that we can get people on and keep the show going. But I'm delighted to talk to you about Black Rabbit, not just because you won the ASC award for it back a few months ago, but and how did both you and Igor are both up for the same show. How was there a friendly competition? Did you guys have some money on this? Were you gambling as well? How did that go?
It's so funny. Well, I remember when we were both nominated, the day I saw it, you start getting these texts on your phone. And, Jimmy Whittaker, I think, was the first person that reached out to me, and then his wife Nicole was the second person, and so I immediately messaged Igor, and Igor and I are very close. And I was like, we both got nominated. This is great. I'm like, you know, we're both really close, so we were both so happy. And like in hindsight, I think I even said, you know, when I went up for the award, I wish I could just, you know, I just wish I could cut it in half and give it the other half, or they just, you know, we both won for it
And
because we really were so collaborative on this. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, you had mentioned just before we started recording here that you had tuned lenses. Tuned lenses. Many of the more premier rental houses will do special tunings of lenses to adjust the effect. And usually you hear about the Panavisions or maybe the Arri rentals, but TCS did some tuning for you as well for this. And I want to dive right into the look of the show, and maybe you can tell me how much that tuning plays a role in it, because, you know, I'm not going to mince words here. Black Rabbit has a bold look. This is a bold show. You guys did not get not you know, you're not like, oh, a little subtleties around the edges. It's got a very specific color palette, and it's very low con in a lot of sequences. And I'm curious, where are you ranking the LUT, the lenses, the camera, the tuning? How much of this recipe, you know, goes to each of these things? How would you split that up?
There's so much. I mean, every one is really an equal part. So yeah, so we initially created a LUT that was a low contrast LUT, and it's very soft in the toe. And and it's interesting because I remember when I did Fargo 4, you know, we did the opposite, and we
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can't talk about the other end of the spectrum. Yeah,
yeah, Danny Gonzalez said, he's like, hey man, I literally just crushed the bottom, and it was just flattened at the toe, and he wanted to have something that was like an ectochrome, just like a very like a reversal film, and this was the opposite. So we really, I mean, obviously, you know, HD cameras are sharp, and we all love them for so many things they can do, but Igor and I both love the idea of beating them up. So we went through the lenses and worked with TCS and doing a, you know, a lower contrast version of the lenses, and they did an amazing job of detuning all of the glass we had. And then we created this LUT again that had a very soft toe. And yeah, and then and additionally, we used filters in front of the lenses that we sort of made that were where we just kind of smoked them out with candles, so they have a you know, we would take clear filters and we would have grades of these kind of custom made smoke filters, which is, you know, it's a very trademark thing for Igor, and it's something I do as well. Like I'm a big fan of creating like a filter cocktail.
Wow.
And that was sort of a very fun thing to do, sort of make customized smoke filters.
Okay, so you did this as analog as you possibly could, in addition to the digital portion of it. So are you basically just like lighting a candle and then holding a 4x5 clear over it, and then getting little bits of soot and discoloration? How do you create a smoke filter?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just taking a candle, a cheap candle, cheap little wax candle, and just and smoking the filters out in certain places. We actually named it the Smoked Martinović after Igor.
Wow.
We thought we could maybe make it a drink at some point too.
Okay, so you've got these custom filters. You've got a custom low contrast LUT. You're lower contrasting the lenses as well. I'm hearing low con on top of low con, but
Yeah.
also I'm gonna say that there is a particular like 1970s-esque almost color palette of earth tones. So there's like earth tones, especially on the interiors. The interiors seem to really have that to me. And so like when you're inside the restaurants, in particular at night, it's like, it's not quite sepia. There is some yellow. It's still in color, but there is this color palette that skews everything. It feels to me like earthy greens and browns and everything else. And I know this is intentional, but how does that come into your whole thing? Because are you monitoring it that way on set? How are you seeing exactly what the final is?
Yeah. Alex DiGirlando, the production designer, is really wonderful. And in talking to Jason, he always wanted the Black Rabbit to have this kind of warm, earthy, velvety, comforting feel to it, right? So that was the one location that always meant to feel warmer. And so there's a lot of brick in there, and there's a lot of, you know, wood and aged textures, and you know, I mean, you could wind up with something very flat with all of those tones. And one thing I thought we did that was very fun, and you really see it if you look at the show, is we used blue for bounce.
Hmm.
So we actually
Cool bounce.
we
Yeah.
yeah, we developed, a specific color that we bounced that was very kind of greenish blue, and we bounced that into blue. And any time we had fill light, it was blue, and we found that was the thing that really gave us contrast of color in the space that could have otherwise just kind of become very pallid and flat.
Yeah, it's now that you mention it, I'm thinking back very specifically, of course, in the scenes with the gangsters as well too. There's an awful lot of blue that comes into that, and a lot of blue fill. It's really interesting because it does something, I believe, to the skin tones to have that cooler fill like that with so much, pumped up in the earthies and the greens and the browns. So and clearly your peers all loved it because you won the ASC award for the finale of the show. I think it was the finale, right? You did the third and fourth and the seventh and eighth. You did an even split with Igor. He did half the episodes. You did half the episodes, and it looks to me like you had all kinds of wonderful melodrama to dive into. It's like all of like as you're planning out, like we talked a little about this color palette, but there's so much drama. I mean, this is a heavy duty drama show where you've got, powerhouses like Jude Law and Jason Bateman. And of course, Laura Linney directed, I know, your first two episodes. So talk a little bit about this, about playing into like the melodrama and finding your angles and your shots and building out these episodes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot. There's really a lot happening here, um, and it is a very anxious, depressing, dark show, right?
No
That
doubt. Yes.
maybe in some ways I didn't realize until I finished shooting the block with Laura, and I started watching her rough cuts, and we were both like, "What? Wow, is it too depressing? Is it too dark?" But but I don't think so because there's just a lot of drama in it, and the relationship of the brothers is just so interesting, right? I mean, there's just magic happening between the two of them. They're equally corrupt, which you think that Jason's character, Vince is really the fuck up, but then you realize that Jake is just as fucked up, right? So, and then you learn from their childhood. But anyway, in crafting the look and figuring the show out, it was never meant to really be a pretty show. It was always meant to feel more raw. And one of the first things that Igor and I looked at together was the Michael Mann movie, The Insider. And there were things that we really grabbed onto about it. One of them is the idea of mismatched coverage. That if there was an over shoulder on somebody, that someone else would get a single or a profile shot. And we loved how alive that film was and how not really necessarily pretty the light is. That sometimes it just gets raw um, and so we thought, well, we could start the series out and it's maybe more composed and very dressed, and you'll sort of notice these interesting kind of Z-axis moves, and there's a lot of dressed foreground, and you're kind of peeking and getting a look into their world. But as we get to know them more, the layers start peeling away. And probably the silkiest looking stuff is in the Black Rabbit. That's always kind of meant to feel like the safe place initially. I mean, even though the shooting happens there, this is sort of like Jude is anchoring this space, and it's a place that Vince comes back to, and there's a certain amount of warmth and comfort to that place. And as the series goes on, Igor and I kept a check on each other that with each episode we would kind of deconstruct the look more and more and more. And then so you'll notice that the camera starts getting closer, the light starts getting more raw. And then by the time we get to the end of the series, and Justin Kurzel came in, and Justin was amazing, and Justin saw what was happening, and he's like, okay, I just want to be all handheld. I want to be as raw as possible. I see what's happening here. And we're just, no process trailers, nothing pretty. I want the camera to be laid as if the operators just picked up and were chasing after the action. And it was really a great continuation of that. But yeah, like this idea of starting kind of more composed, more designed. I don't want to say more precious, but more dressed, let's say. And then we would just kind of peel away and peel away and peel away. And then it just goes haywire at the end.
Interesting. One of the things I had read, Sony did a nice write up about the show, some months ago, and there was a comment in there about using glass rulers to dirty up your frame.
It's
And I was like, I was like, I have to ask about this, because I was like, a glass ruler, is that like a plexiglass, or is it like something like a student would have with like a slide? Is it what is that?
that's a great question. So yeah, when I came in, I noticed that Igor was using a lot of glass and from the restaurant and a lot of foreground street elements. And I always liked using this almost like the cheapest rulers you can buy. You can buy them like Staples, and these little glass rulers that you can fit in the map box. And there's clear ones, and then there's color ones, and then our ACAM op, Ari Isler, when I brought them in, he's like, "Oh, this is great. I can just we can kind of dress them in, and not necessarily have to look for these things everywhere." And then I brought color ones, and he's like, "Okay, we'll use the color ones too." And then I would throw them on the ground and actually step on them and scratch them up. And like,
They were too clean. They didn't have enough aberration. So that's great.
I mean, literally like the cheapest stuff you can use, right? And I've just found like people use split diopters and they get these like clamps and they put on they get really precious and they just take these things and just jam them in and like and you can see them all over the show and like yeah, you probably feel them a lot in Laura's episodes, and they just work great. And I think because they were junkier and we were going for a more deconstructed look, I think they worked wonderfully.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I'm going to say, dirt in the frame. You guys have a lot of foreground elements that you're shooting through and that you're pushing past. And I mean, is it is it fun? Is it fun? Like, I mean, I know you're serving the story, but I'm like, it sounds like you're using like, found objects, anything you possibly can to like put in stuff to.
Yeah, I mean, Alex did a great job of designing the rabbit, so a lot of that was built into that space. And then, when you're doing it for a while, it becomes very intuitive. I think one of my first scenes with that, there's a scene where Roxy, the cook goes to confront Jake about Jules. He's drugging these people,
Yeah.
and Laura Linney was great. Laura's like, she's like, you're gonna want to kill me, but there's this chair upstairs, and it's right against the window, and it's a flat wall. And I just think it makes sense to do it there. And then I know you're gonna want all this depth and all this other stuff, but let's just do it there. But it turned out like there was actually Alex had all these layers of glass built into the set, and it wound up becoming for me one of the best examples of doing that. And like Jake is really obscured through this glass. I think in the first shot of that, and he's like, there's this, it's really quite abstract.
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly the shots you're talking about. I'm thinking back to it right now, and it's quite memorable. When you're working this way, are you then also thinking about like what your reverse is going to be or what the next cut point is? And do you have to then match that sort of funk on the other side, or do you not? You just play it intuitively as to what's going to work? How do you when you're yeah? Well, how does that go together? How do you take shot A and shot B and make sure they work that way?
Yeah, I mean, the process is great, and the process is so deeply collaborative, right? And I think it's always a great thing when you're on a show, and like so you go and you scout and you have your ideas and you lay out a plan, and then our operators, Ari Isler and Matt Pebler, who is our other operator, and they're really almost like doing ACAM ops. They're like, and they think differently and shoot differently, which is also kind of a nice thing with Igor and I wanting to have this mismatched coverage. It was great to have that thought as well. But yeah, so Laura and I would always come in with a plan, but then always kind of be flexible to react a bit. And we kind of knew that in that scene we wanted Roxy to be a bit more, have less obstruction in the frame, and have for her stuff to be a bit cleaner because she's the one that's really being open about it. And we don't know necessarily all the bad things about Jake yet, so we wanted to have him a bit more obscured in frame. And so those things are always in our mind when we're shooting these scenes. But again, in thinking of those scenes, I think we're always the core of it is okay. Well, how are we feeling about how Jake should be represented, and how are we feeling about Roxy, and does this resolve, and then is there a two shot, and which there is in that scene of them sitting together, and And it's sort of a beautiful process where, again, Laura and I came in with a plan and many times met with the operators outside of um, before we even shot. We wanted them in the process. Jason was great too. I mean, Jason had Ari on the initial scouts before the show even started. So everybody's really at this point just kind of thinking together as this collaborative machine. And I always think things are the best when it's like that.
So now you're shooting two cameras, and you've got a lot of motion going on in this too, especially in the later episodes with the handheld. Are you constantly running two handheld cameras and at the monitors, watching them both to try to like plan out how they fit together? I'm just kind of wondering what your process is for getting like the voyeuristic long lens observational choreography with dollies and talent with two cameras. It just seems like it's that extra layer of chess that you have to, or Stratego or whatever game it is, to make sure all your pieces are moving the way they're supposed to. How do you bifurcate your brain in all those ways to make sure that that's working?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're scouting for an enormous amount of time, right? And with both Justin and Laura, I mean, we went and canvassed locations like crazy, and knowing how the show was being done and how we had these, really two incredible operators, uh, I start thinking things like, all right, well, I really just want to light globally as much as possible. So I really just want these. I mean, you hear this all the time, but the deeper you go in your career, the more simple you want to be with the light, and you don't want to just relight everything when you're turning around. Um, so I just knew that there would be the opportunity for I came in the show with very much this like, I like to. I usually don't like B camera to go more than 90 degrees, but in this show, it was I went further than that. And it's like, well, if we have these two amazing people and we're lighting these spaces and we're not trying to make it look pretty, then it became more available for both cameras to work. I mean, I always think a camera always wins, right? There's a shot that pops out in my head at like there's a few. It's funny, there were a few oneers that I feel like there's things that Laura and I started introducing to the show. Like one of them would be like the idea of using tableaus from time to time, just to settle things. Like when Lisa Klein, the reporter, comes to interview Anna, like when they meet at at this the Italian deli on the Lower East Side. There's a tableau which is one of my favorite ones in the show, and I think sometimes it's really good to sort of like settle things for a moment when there's tension and let it live in this because the camera's moving so much. Um,
You mentioned that you were trying not to have too much of a lighting rig or contraption here. So does that mean you were mostly lighting spaces or lighting areas, and that the
Absolutely.
actors just have free reign?
Yeah, like that. Right. So like that scene that we were talking about before with Roxy and Jake, where they're sitting by that window, and we had these large soft boxes outside the window, and we've been doing a lot of sun pouring into the rabbit. I was like, well, this is sort of an interesting darker moment, and we're talking about Jules, so let's just make this an overcast day, and so we just put all this soft light through the windows, and then everything else was just the practicals in that space.
Hmm.
And that entire scene was just lit that way. And it's wonderful when you can do that and when you're lighting broad. Like the more again, the more I go into my career, the more I just want to light as broad as possible. And
It
and let things just exist in it. And I feel I think I was talking to someone recently about this. I was talking to Adolfo, who shot Train Dreams, and we were talking
Yeah.
about um, I saw him at the ASC Awards, and we were talking about the Northwest and shooting outside, which is outside is really the hardest thing I think for any DP. And he's like, I just embraced it. I wasn't trying to make everything perfect and always like bring all this stuff. And because then I'd just be on a studio, like right, like we want to kind of embrace like the imperfections of all the things when we move to different angles. And I think you could see it very much in Black Rabbit. I mean, it's a very globally lit show, and I think it adds more of a realism when you do that.
it's a very it's a very indie thing to do these days, it seems like too. So I think that's interesting because clearly you guys didn't have to do it that way. Was there pressure from anyone, any of the top brass, that they didn't want to see grip, or they didn't want to be waiting on grip? Did they want to play out more like theater, like a play? Well, I'm just curious, like what they like. It's certainly a totally valid way to do things. I'm just curious, like how. I don't meet too many DPs who just like choose from the get go. We're going to put a couple of big lights up. We're going to try to give actors free reign, and there we go. And that's the end of it. So I'm just wondering, how does this decision come about?
No, it's just, I mean, Igor and I had spent time talking about the show, and look, I mean, there's obviously there's lighting happening, but a
Of
lot of
course. Oh
time
yeah.
that lighting is happening right before the scene is being shot. And I remember when I was on House of Cards, and like I think my first episode that I shot, Robin Wright was directing, and I remember saying to her, we were in the Oval Office, and I was like, I can make this 50% better if I could just go in now. And she's like, if you go in there, if you go in that room now, Kevin's gonna kill you. And she's like, it looks good, and like, and she's like, you've done a good job here. And I remember the next day talking to Martin Algren, who's, I'm not sure if Martin's been on the show. Martin's a lovely cinematographer. And Martin saying, he's like, yeah, like sometimes we have to live with this. We know we did a good job, and like, yeah, you can't disrupt the performances. You need to, and it's really a big thing for me, more so now that, like, the more I can think about how less intrusive I can be on the actors, the more I feel like there's a flow to the scene, and I think it really works. Yeah. And I think the cinematography is better too.
We generally on this show don't talk a ton about the talent and the executive producers. We do from time to time, but we don't, like, as a general rule. But I want to bring up, Jason Bateman, because he is both a star of the show and an executive producer, and he's also making more and more, I'm just going to say, darker and moodier and frankly, interesting choices in his career. And it feels like Black Rabbit fits exactly like where it should, between like Ozark and DTF St. Louis. It's like it fits in all this other work that he's doing right now. So I guess my question for you is, how much influence does Jason Bateman have on what you're doing as a DP, as like tone, or I'm just curious, like what are the layers of the conversation like, and how you guys are figuring out how you do what you do, and does executive producers / stars come into that?
For Jason, I feel like initially, yeah, he was very involved in how the show was going to look, and I mean, he's brilliant. He's brilliant with staging, and he's brilliant with moving the camera and the actors, and he understands the ballet of the camera and the talent, and I think that, I mean, right, like Igor and I are probably on the darker side in many ways of DPs, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for that reason he was attracted to us.
It's not like Ozark and DTF are like bright, shiny, happy shows. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and DTF. I mean, man, Jimmy's work is just amazing on that.
It really is. Actually, spoiler alert. I talked to him on Monday this week. So
that it's so awesome. We were actually. I remember I was color grading Black Rabbit, and I was sending Jason frames from the show, and from my grade with Tim Stippen. And he would call me up. He's like, "Oh man, like this is awesome. Like, what are you doing here?" Like, I love that relationship. Like, that's what's so great about the ASC too. Like, so many of us are really close friends, and we talk all the time. And we talk about lighting. Like, different scenarios and different crew. And but to bring it back around,
yeah.
Like I feel like Jason, Igor, and myself were very much discussed the look of the show, and built a deck and a really extensive Dropbox. But then once the show started, and once I got to my episodes, he was great. He was like, I brought you here for a reason, and I want you to just go do your thing, man. Just go do.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful thing,
that's a lot of confidence.
Yeah. It was my first time working with him, and him and Igor inviting me in, like, it's funny. Like, the first day you're so nervous, right? You're like, I just don't want to fuck up, like, I respect these guys so much. But but at the same time, you want to take chances and you want to push it forward. And and I knew our plan with the show was to evolve the look. So, I wanted to, it was almost like, like running a race with Igor. We were passing the baton and he's like, okay, I did these first two, here it is, and you go, and like, and now you push more. And when you're done, I'll look at what you did and you'll have pushed me, and then I'll push more and be inspired by that. And then when we get to the end, it's the same thing. And it was really a wonderful way to work. And so, yeah, there was no executive producers. The only thing I would say, which I always love on these shows, is our main writers, Zach Balin and Kate Sussman, right? And who are also the showrunners and their producers. We would just have these great conversations about story. And I would often, like, and anytime I would do the same thing with, Bo Willimon on House of Cards and Noah Hawley on Fargo, right? You just want to spend time with them. You want to, stroll into their office when you're in prep and talk about a scene. Oh, where are things going? How do we feel about the tone of this? How do we, and those conversations are amazing. And I think when you have that kind of collaboration, then when you're on set together, yeah, nobody's really questioning anything. I mean, you may talk about, oh, well, do we try this or this, or, but I think you're all just kind of moving as one unit when things are well.
Yeah, that's got to be a very satisfying way to work too, because I've certainly been on sets where it felt like there was a couple people rowing the boat in a different direction, and it was always like, what movie are you making right now? So it's like, yeah. So when everyone is rowing the boat together, that's like that's got to be really satisfying too.
Yeah,
feel like
I think you're right. As a DP, you're kind of you're a bit of a coach too, right? And yeah,
For
and so
sure.
I remember, yeah. So when Justin Kurzel came in and he said, it's funny, there were a bunch of things he said. He came in strong, like he came in and he's made some pretty dark stuff. Again, we talked about, he's like, I just want us to be, I just want us to be free. I want the cameras to be free. I know there's this stuff earlier in the series that is dressed and there's these shots on dolly, and I don't want any of that shit. I don't want it. He goes, I'm going to take it a step further. I don't want to fucking see any of your lights. And if I see them, I'm going to yell at you.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it was an interesting note. And so like I painstakingly went through even like the locations, like, there's a scene of Campbell and Jude and, towards the end of the series where they meet in Chinatown at a restaurant. And I remember, like, I replaced all the bulbs and all the stuff, and I had everything on the board. And I really didn't want to. I really wanted to live like that. But if we had switched a little bit, I remember just like whispering to my gaffer, George Selden. I was like, okay, turn that light off. Like, just like, and when they were outside, and when he's running to that restaurant, which I was very happy with, with the look of these scenes. I had lights hidden. I replaced street lights, and it was all stuff that Justin couldn't see,
Hmm.
and it was just there. And that's, I don't know how much people talk about when you come on these shows, like, when you have, our keys, like Pete Blavinetz, our key grip is, God, he's amazing. Like, he's like a TP's dream. Like, we're always looking for great key grips. And George Selden, our gaffer, and then this other guy, Silvio Marfa, came in to help. There was this guy, Casey Ford, who is, I think, our rigging gaffer, and this guy, Robin Parker, our grip. And we were on the scouts. I found those guys to be just as engaged. And they're like, hey, like, I know what's happening here, and I'm just gonna throw lights on the top of that building. I'll throw stuff over there, and also, and they'll just, and then you can just whisper, and turn that stuff on or off, and it'll just. So those,
Wow.
especially episode seven's like all night, and he's running all over the city, right? And it's
Hmm.
just, and you think like lighting and how, like, how do I get myself out of the weeds on some of these scenes, and you have the same amount of time to do this as you do, you know, easier blocks when you're on stage. And when you have those guys all on board with you, it's just, yeah, it was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun, and I feel like we pulled it off.
All right. So in Black Rabbit, there is a lot of conversation about the last episode. In particular, I've gone through YouTube and seen like videos that are entitled like Black Rabbit season finale explained, people which I'm always a little bit perplexed by because I didn't think it needed explaining, but regardless, tell me about the experience of putting this together. What tell me, there's so much happening in this last episode. Break it on down for us.
Yeah, there's a lot happening, right? And there's only one way for it to go, right? Like, it's going to go bad for Vince. I think, it was amazing watching like Jude Law just, like, as Jake just trying to save his brother's life, and then kind of finally getting to this point where you just know that, Vince sees himself on the billboard, and he knows that, like, it's run out for him. He's played all his cards, and then he obviously winds up committing suicide, which was really heavy, right? I mean, and so there was a lot of talk about, was this show going to end there, or would there just be like a simple scene of Jake, which is in the show now. He has puts an old cassette tape and he hears his brother's voice, and then maybe he would just walk down the street with his son. And I think that's something that was kind of really interesting, is that Jason said, we can't do that, man. This is such a dark and depressing show, and we've got to give some hope. We've got to give something. And there was a lot of feeling about whether we did that or not. And I'm gonna say almost everyone else felt like it wasn't the right thing to do. And that, and I think as a filmmaker, he was incredible to realize that I think it really was the right thing to do. And he's like, we need to take this song. It's a New York song. It's going to be great. We just need to show that, we can't leave everybody with this gut punch.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so we went out and shot that sequence, and I think it's great, even to the point that there's this, like, one of my favorite shots actually is that there's this, we kind of like detuned to Steadicam, so it's a little less stable for the show. And there's that very last shot of Jude, who starts out in the bathroom. That's, a throwback to the beginning when he's in the bathroom with a rabbit, right? And then he goes out and you see him go behind the bar. So I think, like, cinematically, I felt like it was a great thing, but more importantly, I thought it was a great way to end the series. And I thought it was incredible that Jason had, just had the vision to see that was going to work. And yeah, that was just a great filmmaking moment for me.
You've really made your bones on these long episodic series that are, I should say, limited series, like, the House of Cards and the Fargo and now Black Rabbit. Do you have a particular approach to this sort of long form storytelling that has evolved over the years when you start to break down the scripts for the episodes and figure out how this is all going to work, and your evolution of, like, the story and the way it looks? How do you piece this together? Do you put a lot of thought into your process of how this goes? How do you do it? How do you make this happen? Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like it's a lot of studying. Like, I remember when I went to House of Cards, I was just studying as much Fincher as I could, right? And obviously, I was familiar with the seasons, and there was a language to that show, and there's such a great purpose to the way he works, and you've heard all the stories, of how you don't tilt the camera, and how the dolly crips maintain the height, and so I wound up just studying as much as possible in a case like that. Like, well, what can I bring to it? What does this scene need? Whose point of view is it? Like, and you can't always, sometimes you have to play in someone else's playground, but I still feel like you can bring things to it. It would just be, again, you'd find out yourself in this great, collaborative process, but, always thinking, like, what's the point of view? Like, whose scene is this? Like, how are we going to best tell a story, and how are we going to work in this language?
After your research and how do you, and deciding what you can bring to it, how do you then go through the mechanics of saying, I'm going to do it this way, or I'm going to put this together? Is it part of the collaborators? Is it bringing together your team?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like kind of rallying everybody, right? Like getting, like, like Robin Wright hadn't really directed before. And the same with Laura, but like they're so intuitive and they're so smart with actors and staging, right? So, like, on House of Cards, Robin and I would spend all of this time going through the sets together, and we just with Artemis and, like, figuring things out, and and it really just kind of cast the net of, like, okay, this is what we want to do. This is what we feel these scenes are. We feel like she was funny. I went out to dinner with her and David Fincher before I did my first episode, and it was really funny. And Robin's like, oh, I'm nervous enough. I'm like, okay, it's my first episode on House of Cards. Martin invited me, like, kind of similar thing. But anyway, like, we spent all this time, and then then we go out with David Fincher, and I'm nervous, and David grabs my arm and he goes, talk to me about tomorrow's coverage. And I felt all crammed on the $64,000 question. Like, like, and eventually I started spinning out what we're doing. He goes, that's great, but like, you have the camera outside the office for that. I don't know, maybe that's the one shot that breaks the point of view. Maybe just bring it in. And it was kind of great. And he brought this great thing to us, which really stuck to me in my career in terms of theory. He's like, like everything's behavior divided by time. And Robin's like, David, what are you talking about in riddles again? What's this all about? And he goes, no, 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 think about it. He's like, when Jodie Foster has to get her phone in panic room, I made it take like 3 minutes. It should take him like 30 seconds, right? When Zoe gets killed in House of Cards and gets pushed in front of the train, it happens faster than it happened. When you find out, you figure out what moments you want to expand and which ones you want to contract, and you can manipulate your audience brilliantly by doing that. And that was on House of Cards, that became my thing. Like, okay, so that's my homework is to study and to find those things. And I remember there's an assassination attempt on Francis, and I remember Robin calling Dave and saying, okay, like, can I talk to you a little bit about behavior divided by time and how fast this happens? And it was such a great thing. And then after that, I went to Fargo, and Fargo is a different language. I mean, but, knowing Dana Gonzalez and Noah Hawley, they very much like the classical, controlled Fincher style. But I remember watching there's some stuff from there. I remember the third season. I mean, it's all brilliant, right? And I remember thinking, like, there's just these crazy shots. There's one that comes out of that stamp and like pulls back, and there's just this great moment that happens. And I remember talking to Dana and just like trying to learn on the show, and like what can I bring to it, and him saying, like, he's like, obviously we do same thing, we do things with purpose, like the camera moves for a reason, we don't do unmotivated camera moves. But we're very big on signature shots. And that was something that really stuck with me, like when you're doing your coverage in certain scenes and you have to, but when, like, where are the moments to do something really special? We did a scene in a jazz club, like, the 50s jazz club, where we had the shot that kind of it starts on a piano player and it kind of comes up around, and there's this guy playing a horn, and then it moves through the space, and it winds up on Chris Roxon's character and that. And I remember, and Dana's, and it was a great thing to figure out, and talking to Dana, he's like, and that's those are the kind of signature shots we do.
It's such a great shot. Dana Gonzalez is a good friend of the show. He's been on several times, and I'm shining his star right here. But it's like, I look at Fargo and I feel like it's like television at the highest level. It's such an incredible show, and the way Noah Hawley is able to somehow keep ratcheting it up season after season, and the season that you worked on, which is I think the fourth one, if I'm not mistaken. God, it's so incredible. It's such a great show. And I know we're here to talk about Black Rabbit, but it's like when you have all these other things, it's like, man, it's like that is such great work. And I love to, I could talk about Dana Gonzalez stuff all day long. It's like, it's so let me ask you this. Did it come from House of Cards? How did you get to Fargo? How did you get on this train that gets you from point A to point B to point C?
I guess I'm going through this whole process, subconsciously. That's what I was doing. Like, yeah. So like I remember in House of Cards, I said to my agent, like, I was doing a lot of commercials and videos at the time. I was like, I need to get back in the narrative. I just, I knew Martin Algren, and they said, we're at the same agency at the time. We are another new agency together now. And anyway, they needed somebody to do like 50 inserts or something. And I'd always been obsessed with that Vimeo. Have you ever seen that montage of David's inserts from Zodiac?
No, I've never seen that.
Oh, look it up. It's really great. So I remember going in thinking, like, I'm just gonna go crazy with these inserts. I'm gonna make, and they deserve that purpose. I mean, so I did all these inserts and all this stuff, and then that, led to, me covering Martin on Main Unit, and things were going well. And then eventually, Martin's very busy with that, and you can prep a lot with Robin, and she hasn't directed much, so that was kind of my entrance into House of Cards. I stayed for the next season. I think Martin went to do Daredevil. Dana Gonzalez saw one of my episodes of House of Cards with Robin, and he's like, There's something happening there. There's something I identify with.
Mm.
So he called me and initially asked me about Legion, and I think I was on something else. And then he called me back and he said, "Hey, why don't you come join us for Fargo?"
Mm.
So I do Fargo, and obviously having a wonderful time with him, and all the while you just feel like you're growing, right? You're working on those kind of shows. It's amazing how, I mean, it's just, Aristovitus would say, like, it's like going off to war, right? Like you kind of have to say to your family, like, you're not gonna get the best of me when I'm, which kind of sucks, right? But it's like, like I'll probably even when I'm talking on the weekend,
Yeah,
they'd be
exactly.
like, yeah, what'd you say? Well, it's like there's a lot of that. Yeah, I think, Jason and Igor had kind of become aware. I mean, Igor and I had both been on House of Cards, and Jason initially reached out about Ozark, and I was going to do another season of Fargo
Hmm.
in Calgary, the fifth season, so I wasn't available for that. I get a call from Igor, and he's like, "Yeah, Jason brought up your name, and we're thinking of you maybe for the show Black Rabbit, and if you want to jump on a call with Jason, and he'll chat with you." And he started describing it to me, and Igor told me a little bit, and it felt like the right thing to do. It's a mini series, which I think is it is the sweet spot for TV, right? So that was my evolution to that.
Well, I don't know if you're aware, but last week Variety listed all of their picks for the nominations for Emmys, and Black Rabbit is listed for the limited series. So it's like, so for cinematography, Variety is shining yours and Igor's star here. They didn't specifically call out either one of you, but there's only 5 nominees there. But Black Rabbit's listed. Emmy voters are, it's top of mind for them, clearly, because Variety also, Variety name checked it there. So just, I think that it's great that this show continues to live on and that people are still watching it. Every once in a while, I feel like there's these little blips of, I feel like good shows continue to have long lives. And I know people who go back and they watch seasons of Fargo too. And it's like, because you've got, the one thing that's great, I think, about these limited series is you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like, especially in anthology shows, it's like there are so many shows which run forever, and it's like, do I really want to commit to that when I know that this thing is not going to be renewed and it's not ever going to have a particularly satisfying ending? Or, oh, they had to, they thought they'd run it forever and then they just kind of chopped something in together at the end. What the work is that you're doing is super satisfying, especially to the people who want to binge television, who want to have like a contained story, and they want a lot of it. I think it's a really great place for you to be and for you to be practicing your craft, because you get to do some of the most satisfying work out there, not work that people forget about because it's just, oh, it's another season. It's another season. Having that self-contained is kind of amazing. Do you feel like this is a space that you want to stay? Do you want to do more features? Do you want to do other stuff? What's your desire?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I always feel like I want to do anything that's interesting, right? But I do think that, yeah, I enjoy the limited series world. I think I'd certainly feel like I'm ready to make a good feature. Like I'd like to, dig in and really chew into a story. I'm less interested in, yeah, like the longer running series, or like I'll often get called for a show that's been out there to come in for a season or something, and I find myself, yeah, like not motivated, and I've always waited. I've been patient. I've been able to, go into commercials on the in-betweens, and I've sort of been like super picky, and my theory is like it's got to be as good as any of this stuff, right? Like if I can make a living, I can hold out, and it'll be worth it.
This has been a great conversation. I got one more question I'd like to ask you, which is, clearly you've been around the block. You've probably learned a few things the hard way in your time in this business. What is something that a young DP who wants to work in this long form television that they might not fully understand? What is something that you had to learn that you could possibly impart to them that might save them a couple of bumps in their career path?
Interesting. I think it's really important to shoot a lot. Like I think it's important to do shorts, like to not kind of not hold back, to find your community of people to grow up with together, find people that want to take chances, like you do. Like reach out, talk to people. Don't be afraid to reach out to directors. And you know, if you're starting out, maybe it's ones that, yeah, that are in your age group and you're seeing something special with. And you know, maybe suggest, like, well, why don't we, if you're interested in doing a short, because I mean, everybody, especially like, right, like so many people start in commercials and videos. And I remember I met this guy. I'd taken some classes at the new school, like some, cinematography classes, and I met this guy, Dave Von Anken, and he had sent me a Tobias Wolff short story, Bullet in the Brain.
Mm.
And I remember like I just kind of pestered him, and I said, "Dude, we've got to make this story is amazing. We've got to make this thing." And we got Tom Noonan for it, and Dean Winters is in it, and it was one of the first things I ever did. And I think it's important to be to kind of fly the flag for those projects as a DP. It's like maybe push directors, like some, you know, find somebody that wants to take those chances with you, like, and then yeah, you can get the resources. You can go to rental houses. Like I'm good friends with Robert Keslow and Dennis McDonald at Keslow. Like those guys are amazing, and they'll people like that, or Eric Steitinger and Oliver at TCS. Like you can go to those places and they'll say, look, we want you to be with us for your career. So you need help with a camera package, we're gonna help you out, right? We're gonna like build those relationships. And then all of a sudden these things don't seem as insurmountable. It's like, oh, I can get a camera. Oh, I can get these favors. And because those people want to help nurture your career as well.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. And you take your own advice because I know you still shoot shorts. I saw, actually, I watched this morning when I knew that this interview was going to happen. I went and watched Panties.
Oh,
So,
no way.
yes,
It's awesome.
Panties
Yeah.
is on Vimeo. You can watch it. It was from 2024, so it's like it was quite recent. So, in addition to Black Rabbit and all the other stuff that you're doing, it's like you still found time to go shoot this short. So,
Man,
like,
if somebody sent me, yeah, like an experimental project or a cool short or something like tomorrow, and I was like, yeah, I think I do something cool with this. Like, like, yeah, I'm always open for it. I mean, I think you'll probably find the biggest DPs in the world, right? Like, and it's the same thing like with actors, right? You can reach out to actors that, like when we did Bolt in the Brain, like, the fact that we got Tom Noonan and like someone said, well, let's just ask Tom. Let's ask Dean Winters. I think he was just like coming off Oz, and then I think we got George Plimpton, and then Dean Winters like, let's get George Plimpton to do the voiceover.
yeah.
And it's amazing how, I'm one of those people that definitely thinks when you put positive things, and you try to create a bit of an aura around yourself, then other people are attracted to that. Jason's someone like that, right? Like Jason, like people like, what's it like working with Jason? What's it? I was like, this guy comes in, like he loves the crew, he loves being around people. Um, it's yeah, like we all just, when you get that excitement around making a film and you do that early in your career, right? Then it's just gonna carry forward to great things.
Pete, this has been a fantastic conversation. Where can people find you online besides the fact that they can go see your work on all these streaming platforms and stuff? Do you have an Instagram or anything like that? Can people look you up?
Yeah. My Instagram is just Pete Konczal, I think underscore ASC. Um, my website's a little bit outdated. I'm working on it, but I'm at an agency called Iconic, where they have a bit more updated work for me. So those are probably the two best places right now. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Peter Konczal, ASC, thank you so much for being on the show. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks so much, and what a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
All right, so that was Peter Konczal. Hey, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great chatting with you, and I look forward to whatever you shoot next.
All right.
All right, Ben, it is our short end time of the show. It's the time we talk about pet obsessions. Do you have a pet obsession this week?
Well, I kind of wanted to ping Widow's Bay, which I know we've talked about on here. And not just you, but several people have told me Widow's Bay is like they made a TV show just for you, Ben. And I finally, I've had a lot of TV shows in the queue ahead that I had to watch for this podcast. Woe is me. I had to watch awesome TV shows. But I've been wanting to get to Widow's Bay, and I finally got to it. And I'm just here to say, wall-to-wall awesome. Like, such a great show. The acting is great. The casting is great, cinematography is great, the writing is great. It's just it's really well done, and it's got like a really quirky, comedic yet horrific vibe. Like somehow comedy and horror both coexist equally in Widow's Bay without one undermining the other. You know, the fear is always like, well, comedy will pull the stakes out of horror and make it feel less consequential so you won't be scared, or the horror will make the comedy too morbid. But I feel like they found this like kind of, it's like a folk horror world in a way. Like I would say if I was gonna typify the horror, it's like that kind of H.P. Lovecraft-esque New England folk horror. And the main character played by Matthew Rhys, who is one of the most brilliant actors working today, consistently blows my mind. From The Americans to this, he sets the tone of kind of like high stakes, but also a little funny, and it's really good. Now I know that the finale just dropped. I'm about, I think, halfway through the season. I can't recommend it highly enough. And then I also wanted to throw kind of a side short end, because it's something that it's a rabbit hole that I fell down on Instagram, and it's a guy named Brian Patrick. His handle is at Panodime, PANO.DIME, and he started a project this year where he posts a crazy thing that an AI executive every day until he runs out of crazy things. And he's, a few hundred days in, obviously. I just encourage anyone to go check it out. When you hear what the executives at the AI companies are saying about how it's going to reorganize society and wipe out all jobs and make humans, obsolete and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, so the person who's doing this, the person who's architecting this thing keeps saying these crazy, crazy things. It just gives me some pause. Not that Artlist is trying to make humans obsolete, but it just came up when we were talking about Artlist. I would say check out his Instagram. Watch. He's just kind of showing some quotes. Sometimes he'll have a little bit of commentary. Most times he doesn't. And does it chill my blood? It doesn't make me happy, but I also don't know how seriously to take this, because I'm old enough to have been through many, many technological fads that turned out to be very different than the people who started them believed that they were going to be. And I tend to think AI is going to be one of those. We can't exactly see what it's going to do right now because we're in the middle of it.
Wow, that's a pretty big transition off of Widow's Bay, but all right, that's great.
All right, yeah, just kind of 1-2 punch. Yeah, both are entertaining. Anyway, Ilya, What is your pet obsession this week?
Yes, Ben, my obsession is I just saw the trailer for The Social Reckoning. Have you seen this trailer?
I have. Very, very excited. Shot by, didn't Jeff Cronowith shot
Jeff Cronowith shot it?
Shoot, that's the past tense, yeah.
It's his, and it comes out in October, and I'm very excited for this because Aaron Sorkin is back, who of course wrote The Social Network. David Fincher, not back, so it will definitely probably have a different vibe somewhat, and the trailer definitely makes it look like it has a certain vibe, and there's a little bits of like lore and stories about the making of the movie coming out now. Like, for example, Jeremy Allen White and Jeremy Strong have many scenes together in the movie, but actually never ever worked on set together. They were always separate, so all of their scenes that take place together, they are not together at all. So I'll be very curious to see how
that's weird.
That
Why is that? Just their schedules?
It could be. I didn't actually go deep down into that, but I've seen this headline now a couple of times, and it's like, wow, interesting, because sometimes that can work just fine. Other times can certainly be chemistry and read problems, because actors like to play off of actors. That's kind of how it works.
Okay, I can actually speak to this a little bit, because I've directed some audio dramas where there were actors who were not available to be in a session with other actors, and because it's audio, you could just burn it. And I fought like hell to get the characters who had to have the most banter off of each other be in the same session, even if we had to reschedule it to a weird time, and succeeded at that. But there were some that we weren't able to do that with, and what you get is kind of the performances can be great, but the reactions are going to be basically a reaction to what is written, not what was performed. And so it gives actors less playroom. And, you've got two actors there who are extremely serious thespians who are going to, leave it all on the field kind of actors. And I feel like you're going to get a great performance out of both. But my guess is it would have been twice as good had they been able to be in the same room. And my other guess is, unless there was some methodological reason for doing it that way, the reason they did it that way is probably, just scheduling.
Most likely. But I got to say that Jeremy Strong as Mark Zuckerberg looks fantastic. He really does look great.
Sorkin's great, and Jeff Cronenweth, one of the best. I look forward to talking to him about doing this. I remember talking to him about shooting Being the Ricardos and just how much he reveres Aaron Sorkin. But like Aaron Sorkin shot, the first thing he ever directed I guess was some second unit stuff that they did on The Social Network, and Jeff was his DP on that. And they really formed a bond, and so I'll be fascinated to see how it comes out.
This is Mikey Madison's return to the big screen since Anora, so that'll be interesting to see as well.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah. All right, Ben, that does it for this episode. Who made this show possible? Who do we have to thank?
I mean, to no one's surprise, as always, our amazing producer Alana Cody, who is lining up and she is quite busy lining up interviews right now because it's Emmy time and editing. So she's producing and editing. Don't envy all that. But Alana Cody, we'd be nothing without her. We would be nothing. We'd be what we were before her, which is a podcast that had a new episode drop twice a year.
I think she's getting a big head because of this. I think that really we should probably stop praising her so much.
Start bringing her down to size. That hack.
We're less than nothing, really. How much do we have to grovel that we do it? So.
Well, and then we also got to thank Kay's Alektrakshi, who composed all the music that you hear on here. Check out Kay's website, musicbykays.com. If you have a synthesizer in need of repair, check out kayslabs.com. Kay's is repairing vintage synthesizers, which is I'm just going to call that a pretty specialized thing to be doing.
Yeah.
Did you know that Kay's band played at the Whiskey a Go-Go a couple weeks ago?
I did not know that.
True story. Anyway, so that about does it. Ilya, where can people find you?
You can find me over at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com. If you need lenses, lights, cameras, any sort of building a studio, we can do all that for you at Hot
Hard
Rod
drives?
Cameras. Hard drives, of course. Hard drives, flash drives, memory cards.
Microphones?
Microphones. We got microphones. We got microphones for days. We got all
cable ties.
All the cable ties. We got cable ties, bongo ties, zip ties. You name it.
Pelican cases.
Pelican cases, Storm cases, SKB cases, Nanook cases. Yeah. All right. So Ben, where can people find you?
You can find me at benrock.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Most of the social networks I'm there, but LinkedIn is probably the businessiest way to say hello. But if you find me on Facebook and you want to, see how my son's doing at soccer, that's weird, but you're welcome to say hi. Anyway, that's about it. Ilya, would you like to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in.
This has been Cinepod, the cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory at hotrodcameras.com. Watch and subscribe to our show on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow and interact with us on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. But not X. Don't do that. Thanks for tuning in.